Hello, everybody. We're back. Episode 21, presented by SodaStick.com. Another awesome episode coming at you. Andrew Brunette, Mr. Bruno, will be our guest. Talk a little bit about 2002, 2003 coaching, actually, and him working with the state high school tournament, which I had no idea.
I literally
That's amazing.
I also thought when he said that it was going to be like somewhat recently. He's like, yeah, 2005. I'm like, 2005?
And
like,
I do remember that year because I remember I was kind of dating a kid that played on the Holy Angels team. So I remember them going and to the tournament and play. Yeah.
Kind of dating. Big mood. Relatable.
I had probably a bigger crush on him than he had on me. So that's where that line ends, if I'm completely honest. I just thought he was really cute, and we talked on text and stuff like that.
Well, and what a year, too, that he talks about TJ Oshie. I'm like, you got a good year to call a state tourney. I mean, if you're only going to do it one time, that's a good time to do it, I guess.
That was a heck of a game, too, if you, Alexis and Fred,
yeah, let me dig back into my like 8-year-old brain and see if I can remember.
Watch. I mean, I think David Levac, shout out to him, who writes for the Star Tribune. He came out with the Tourney Time book, and it has that full game in there, and it's epic. Like reading that was super epic. So, but yeah, he's our special guest. We also have a little bit of news to talk about. I know usually we are the bubbly, happy, go lucky girls, and not that we're changing that direction or feel or vibe at all. But there is a topic that recently came to light last week that we have to kind of address as females in hockey and females in sports and even females in the world.
Yeah, in general.
And I don't want to give it too much air because at the end of the day, Brendan Leipsic is a fourth liner that I actually had to look up. I've seen his name like once or twice on a game sheet, right? So, I mean, there is that. But for those of you that are unaware, the Washington Capitals forward had some DMs leaked that were very derogatory towards women, talking about, very vulgarly sex stuff, a lot of fat shaming, just a lot of inappropriateness that unfortunately I think is too common in sports culture, but a lot in hockey culture as well. For me, I've always been, I've just been the cool chick, right? Like I've been around that speak a lot, and not that I sit idle and like stand by and let it happen. It just doesn't usually bother me too much. I can brush a lot of stuff off of my shoulders, and I'm around it a lot, and it's never been directed at me, not making it okay, but it's never bothered me nearly as much. And I apologize for those that are offended by that. That's just kind of who I am. I'm a very easygoing person. And sometimes it can be funny too. If it's meant lightheartedly, I can laugh about some of the stuff or
among friends or something like that.
Right. Yeah. Like some of it I can let slide, but for some reason this really triggered me. And I think a lot of it had to do with some of the people that he was attacking. There was obviously, I ain't no size 2. But I think there was that fat shaming thing, and it's unknowingly to these women, he would share their posts and then talk shit about them behind their backs. Right. Another one that really triggered me was actually one of his teammates, Tanner Pearson. And there's this adorable picture of Tanner and his wife behind the glass with their little boy. And what a sweet picture. Literally nothing. And
you see pictures like that all the time with wives and girlfriends. It's like
and he shares it and then makes fun of it and makes fun of Tanner's wife and how she looks. And it's like, and I think the reason that triggered me so much is I've had that happen to me where I had posted a very sweet picture. I was pregnant with Caden. It was actually almost a year ago. I was pregnant and Hudson was sitting next to me. And we both had our computers up, and it was just a really sweet picture. And it's me and my kid. And somebody had the audacity to talk about my nipples in that moment for whatever reason. And it just took, and I've been said, some nasty things have been said to me, like gross sexual. And usually I can be like, whatever, and ignore it. But that stuck with me because it tainted this picture. And I think the same thing for Tanner and his wife, right? Like that picture was probably very, very special to them. And now you've tainted that. And now you have this gross association with it. And you're making a woman feel poorly about herself for no good reason. And so I think that's why I want to talk about it. I know this was a long lead in, but I really wanted to vocalize again. This isn't going to be a man haters segment by any means. It's just something that we need to address, I think. I mean, Alexis, what are your thoughts? I know you're kind of not new to this world, but you're a little bit on the younger side. What have you seen from that perspective of misogyny in hockey?
Well, just a couple things. One, I would say I'm the same as Jessi as far as that kind of, I don't get bothered by stuff easily. Even if someone when people have directed things at me about things they don't like, I'm like, okay, whatever. Either I agree with them because I'm like, yeah, I hate that about me too, or I just don't care. I'm like, whatever. It doesn't bother me that much.
Right? Like you have to have a tough skin when it comes to the position that we've put ourselves in.
That's what I was just going to say. Exactly. You know, that being, you know, and Jessi, I'm on the TV side of stuff for the most part. So like with the Whitecaps, I mean, I've had people say stuff about me when I've done broadcasts for the Whitecaps. I'm like, that's kind of mean, but whatever. It's not going to ruin my day.
Yeah.
And you just know going into this business that that you are going to get attention, and people, you know, you're going to be a little bit more in the spotlight than the average person. And so you know that kind of stuff is going to happen, whether it should happen or not. It is, you expect at some point to come across something like that. And it sucks. It shouldn't have to be that way. You shouldn't have to go into it thinking at some point in your career, someone's going to say something to you or hurt your feelings or try to attack you verbally or something like that. And it's really sad that that's how it is sometimes. And again, I've been lucky where I can't remember a time where anyone's been like very, very vicious towards me where I was like ready to cry, but people have said stuff and I'm like, okay, that sucks.
I think, and furthermore, like, you know, not to interrupt, but we put ourselves in that position a little bit, right? Like we put ourselves, whereas these wives didn't. No. I mean, you know, I think that's also where the unfairness comes about. Like, why are you? And I think, again, not to say that, again, I've heard worse. I know people have said worse in hockey and in sport, and there's been worse things directed at women. And again, that sucks and that's gross and that's terrible. But this sticks with me because it's just like he went so out of his way to just be so gross and rude to people that he had no right to be gross and rude to. You know, a pregnant player's, I mean, that's your teammate too. What a shit teammate you are. Like, but I think there's that difference too.
That was there's two things about this that really like stuck out to me and bothered me in a way. And the first thing was, you're saying something about a woman who, what did she do to you? I mean, and granted, you should never say that about somebody regardless, but it's not like she attacked him or attacked his girlfriend or like she like put herself in a position to be like bullied or whatever. And it doesn't make it right. Even if she did do something mean, that just makes both of them wrong. But this especially bothered me because I'm like, what did she do? Like you said, it was a very beautiful, cute picture of her and her kid with Tanner along the glass. Like I said, we've seen a million of these pictures with wives and girlfriends and families, and I think they're adorable. I love seeing pictures like that. It's so fun to see the kids.
Oh, they're the best.
Even in the picture that he was saying stuff about her, she had a huge smile on her face, and like they just look so happy. And you're saying stuff for no reason whatsoever. And the first thing I thought of is like, once she saw this stuff come out, like I can't imagine, like her heart probably dropped and she probably did feel bad about herself for no reason whatsoever other than this one person decided to say something mean about her, and it probably stuck with her a little bit since she saw it. And again, it's the kids in the picture. It's like, she's not putting herself in any position to deserve that kind of hate, that kind of attention. And so that really bothered me, one. And two, like you said, it's another hockey player in the same league that you play in. Like this isn't, again, not that it would make it any better if it was a random person or a random girl or whatever, but it just hurts a little bit more knowing that you're doing that to people you play alongside, you play against, you play with, whatever.
I mean, he's been on 5 teams in 6 years. And as Wes Walz tweeted at me, like, there's no surprise. I mean, that makes sense. Like, obviously there's a lot going on there. And it's just, and even his apology seemed so half-assed. Like, he's not sorry that he said it. He's sorry that he got caught. And it's just kind of, again, it makes you really take a hard look at the culture. I love the sport to death. And I love so much of the, you know, what has gone along with it, which sometimes it's the chirping, you know, that is kind of the fun stuff, and it's chirping each other. And sometimes maybe you cross a line, but you really cross a line when it's women that have nothing to do with the game. You know, and I think we have never done ourselves any favors with, you know, by calling ourselves puck sluts or puck bunnies or jersey chasers. I mean, there's always been that connotation with women in sport, and it's somehow sexualized into, we are just chasing after them because they play the sport. It's like, there are women out there that love sports just as much as men, can talk sports just as much as men, if not better. I mean, frankly, you know, that it's hurtful to those women, and it's hurtful to any young woman that wants to maybe get into this career because, you know, you have to thicken your skin up. I was so soft when I came into this. I was such a softie that, like you had said, even the comment last year that still kind of bugs me. It doesn't hurt my feelings. It bugs me. That would have destroyed me for a day, you know, because I'm a sensitive person, and I'm so happy-go-lucky, and I want everyone to be nice and happy. And I know that's a hard stretch, and you toughen up, but I never want that to deter a young woman from being afraid to get into sports because it's hard, and it's a lot harder than it is for men. And I'm sorry, that's just the way it is, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't have to be. And, you know, I want to be able to try to change that dynamic. I mean, I think, and I will say this too, I've been very lucky, and I think Alexis, you would agree. The amount of people that have attacked me negatively, it's like a 1%. It's and I have been so lucky to be surrounded by amazing male coworkers and colleagues and interactions. Like it's a very small percent. And I'm sure the same with hockey players, right? There's a very small percentage that act that way and treat women that way and speak that way. But the fact that it still exists, and I mean, you could extend that beyond the hate on females, right, to the racial differences and the stuff that we've heard there too. I mean, you need to have the conversations, and everyone needs to be open about it to have those conversations in order for any change to happen. And again, I know he's, you know, he doesn't represent hockey. He doesn't represent all of hockey, but it still exists. And I'm not afraid to say that it's still there. And I know part of that is kind of the fun of it, but I know Fred, you had mentioned a good thing, Letterkenny. I do love Letterkenny. It's a great TV show, but you're right. That kind of normalizes it and makes some of that conversation okay. Tell us a little bit more about your thoughts there.
Well, I think Letterkenny is kind of a recent example of it really being shown kind of the expectation of what, I don't know, because it goes beyond hockey for Letterkenny, the show, because it's more of like a lowbrow humor coming from Canada.
Rural Canada too, right? Yeah.
Right. But I think Letterkenny draws a line where a lot of it's in your face and it's directly to the person. And usually that person chirps back.
Right.
And so it's a lot of like, you don't see like attacking somebody and that person not be able to handle it on Letterkenny. You see usually both sides going at it and throwing out chirps at each other. And rarely is it about physical appearance.
Yeah.
You know, and I do want to bring up a couple things that have come to my mind as a guy with this situation, is that you can't downplay this, because this is prevalent across all sports.
Yes.
And a lot of it, I think, is the lack of female exposure that guys are being shown earlier in life when it comes to growing up during their teenage years and early 20s. Because I would argue you're not going to see this behavior a lot of times with guys who have wives, with guys who have really important big sisters or moms that are part of their lives throughout their, you know, adolescence, and them actually coming to being a man.
To interject, sorry, I asked Mike, like when I showed him those DMs that I found, I said, like I've heard, again, I'm around dudes all the time. I've been such a guy's girl, and I'm like, I've never heard a guy actually like talk like that. Like, she rode my hog until I busted. I was like, who speaks like that? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, I don't speak like that, you know, and he loves to have fun and joke and whatever too, but he's like, I don't speak like that. So yeah, it is. It's not every male. We don't hate men by any means.
I was raised by, like, I would argue I was raised by like 4 women in a lot of my, you know, child life, my grandmother, my aunts, my mom. And, you know, I would never dare do that, but also I have higher empathy for what the women are going through in a lot of situations. But it's just a lack of exposure. You're not actually being exposed at times where you need to step back and think, okay, how does this person actually feel about it? But I also want to point out that what happens in darkness must be brought to light. A lot of this wasn't like there's a big difference between trolls online and private conversations. You know, trolls online, it's so horrible, especially with my wife, who's in the television media, who is a television person. She gets it constantly. I mean, we've had to put out calls to the police for situations that have gotten a little dangerous. But you have to take perspective of how bad are their lives where they have to reach across the interwebs and attack somebody to make themselves feel better. And so the way to get through it a lot of times is compassion, which is the exact opposite of a lot of people's reactions. Just because, you know, their life, no matter what they've said to you, their life is worse than what you're feeling or what your life is. But in private conversations, you have to bring that to light, because this is exposing what's actually happening privately. And, you know, people as who they are as a character is not in the media, is not who they actually are in private. And so a lot of these guys are just out there doing this stuff because there's no repercussions.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I think you saw Twitter light up, and I had even commented on it, which, like I said, I usually kind of sit back and I apologize to the females that feel like maybe I'm not advocating as much for us, but it takes a lot to get me riled up. And to say something, I think it was because women finally have found a little bit of a voice and, a right to say, this is not okay. We need to stop this. And I do love one of the gals that he had made fun of, and I'm not super familiar with her, but her name's Nicole Zajac, not related to the hockey player Zajac, I don't believe.
That's funny too, because Tanner Pearson, like my last name is Pearson. Girl, yeah.
For those that don't know, he's not related to Alexis.
Not related,
right? Yeah. But she was one of the targets of him, where he just called her fat, right? And she's a gorgeous girl. Like, she's.
Are you talking about
beautiful.
Her Instagram post?
Yes, and so
she's posted, so pretty.
So she was a target, and of course, and that's the other bummer that these were leaked, is that now these women are in the public even more, and people are looking at them. But her response was, she posted kind of like a little sad face and all the negative comments that are around her. And then on the second post, it was a happy face. And, it was like, I am beautiful, and all the positive comments that she receives. And it was, her caption was, no point focusing on the terrible things people say about you when there are way more positive things that you can be celebrating. Which, like to Fred's point on the compassion, it's like, there are things to celebrate, right? Like, I mean, you got to find some light in some of this, and the light would be maybe that we're talking about it again. I think the conversation is so important on this topic, and then on racial diversity in sport too, which is for another time. But I think it's just a situation that needs addressing in general.
Yeah. I also want to point out that a lot of boys, and this is coming from a guy's perspective, but a lot of boys are not shown how to treat women.
Yes, I agree.
They're not. And that's coming from a guy's perspective. It's a lot of, you're pointing at this guy, you're saying, okay, he's a problem. Yes, he's a problem. But also the problem is, what happened 10 years ago?
Right.
What happened at the time when he was coming of age, where someone didn't say, no, this isn't okay. That could have been coaches. That could have been, captains of the team. It could have been his dad. There's a lot of like stopgaps that were blown right past, that somebody didn't say, this is how you actually treat women. And
again, in hockey, and in hockey, you bring up those ages. Junior hockey takes players out of their homes, and now you're surrounded 100% with your teammates and your coaches. And again, it's a part of hockey. It's boys culture. We're in the locker room. It's just locker room talk. I mean, I would say some of the most
You can have your locker room talk and still not be rude, racist, sexist, whatever. You can still have your locker room talk. I say stuff to my friends in our group messages that I might not say to my parents, but go ahead. You could post it on the internet if you want it. It's just us being funny, being stupid, being dumb.
Yeah.
I've never said anything bad about another person though. Like you can that's why I hate when they pull the whole locker room card. It's like, yes, you can have that. I get that. There's things that people want to talk about in private circles that they might not share with the public or with other circles in their life. But that doesn't give you an excuse to be a bad person, to be a mean person, to attack other people. You can still be funny. You can still make jokes. You can have all of that without being a bad person. And I think that's the thing that bothers me the most, is no one's trying to take away your humor. No one's trying to take away your closeness to your teammates or to your friends or whatever that may be. No one's saying you can't have that. We're just asking you to be a good person, be a nice person, and respect other people, whether you know them or not.
I mean, I'll even venture to go, because there was, we're talking a lot about the body shaming, which again, to me was the big hit. But then there's like the sexual exploits. You want to talk about how many people you had sex with? That's fine. I'll tell you too. I'll give you my number if you want. I won't. I will lie about it. But you don't have to bring the person down that you had sex with. You could say, yeah, no, we did. We hooked up. We had a great time. Cool. Good for you. I mean, I get that.
Move on with it. Yeah.
Like, you don't need to be like, oh, she did that. Oh, she was gross or whatever. Or like, I don't want to degrade her. Like, that's when you're crossing that line. Like, I don't have a problem with some of the conversation, but like Alexis said, don't be a dick. Like, you don't have to be a dick about it. Like, if you keep those opinions to yourself, and it's just kind of, it's exhausting that this has to come up so often, right? It's also it's just like, why? I mean, and it's sad that women have to feel like they have to look a certain way still to this day. Like, I mean, I do it for me. just as much as I do it for everyone else, right? Like if I want to put makeup on, I'm going to do it because I want to put makeup on, and I just feel like I'm ready for the day. Let's do this. But I know there's the inside my head that's also like, well, yeah, also because there's guys that are going to look at this and you don't want them to say anything mean, because I don't want people to be mean to me. Granted, I'm 32 and I've moved past. I mean, come at me, I guess. Like I'm married and I'm fine. Like no big deal.
Yeah.
But it is. So this is just our other reminder. Again, we told you we didn't want to talk too much about him right now. But it's, just be nice to each other.
I just want to say something quick too. I kind of what Jessi touched on it a little bit, and Fred as well, but just because you love something and love a sport, love a group, love an organization, whatever, you can still love that thing or those people and point out issues that need to change. It's like anything else. You could love another person and say, you need to fix this certain part of you though, whatever it may be. So you can still, just like Jessi and I said, we love hockey. We absolutely love hockey. I can't imagine my life without the sport. I can't imagine not working
the hockey
in the
guys
sport.
too, right?
Yes,
like, I mean,
exactly.
I kind of love that banter. I love the way they talk sometimes. Like I'm like, what does that mean? But I like it, but not extreme.
It's important to you can still have that love and passion for something, but it's also important to not ignore when stuff like this happens. And that's why we talked in the three of us here have a group message where we talk about ideas for the show and whatnot. And Jessi brought this up last night. She said, should we talk about it? And I said, well, at first I was like, I don't know. We don't really talk about stuff like this. We don't talk about the controversial, things that are going on when it comes to this stuff. And then we kind of talked more, and Fred made some good points as well. And was like, you know what, we should talk about this. Like Jessi and I are women who work in this sport, and we're around these people. And it's important that we say what we have to say about it. And hopefully we can move on with it. And this isn't something we have to cover every week. Hopefully this is, a once in a blue moon kind of thing that we have to talk about. But it's important to point out the injustices that are going on, even if it's among people that you love or among something that you're a part of. And I think that's more than anything why we felt the need to talk about it, because it is important to discuss. Fred?
I do want to throw something out that I really hope that these incidents just keep happening. And I hope that hockey players, if you're listening, or anybody, your actions reflect against what you're a part of. And if you are doing that sort of stuff, it's going to get out and it's going to reflect bad upon the whole organization. Maybe there's a 1% of that organization that actually, does this stuff. But you got to remember, it reflects poorly on not just yourself. And it just gives everybody else ammunition to say, see, look at what these guys do.
Yeah.
And it completely clouds all of the charity, all of the great work that hockey does for communities. And it's such a shame.
It's disrespectful to your point, it's disrespectful to their teammates, to the people who are trying to do the right thing and be a good person and shed good light on themselves, on an organization, on a city, on a community. So at the very least, it's a selfish thing that you're doing. Not only are you being rude, disrespectful, mean, and whatever it may be, but you're making the other people that you associate yourself with on a day-to-day basis look bad just by being a part of that organization. So I don't know. Again, this goes beyond hockey people. This goes beyond sports. This is just a general thing to everybody. You should not be doing this stuff. I hate it. I hate that people feel that it's okay to talk like that about people. What do you gain from it by being mean to other people? You gain nothing. You look bad. Now everyone hates this guy. So good luck dealing with that for the rest of your life. I mean, is anyone ever going to go back and be like, oh, is anyone going to buy a Leipsic jersey after this? I don't think so. I mean, if you were already
weird anyway, like I said, he's a fourth line plug.
I just don't know why people would put themselves in this position. You look dumb when you do that. And it's hard to come back from this kind of stuff, especially in today's day and age. People will not let this go, and they shouldn't let it go. They shouldn't be forgiving unless you're going to make an obvious effort to change the kind of person that you are into a kind of person that deserves that kind of respect. So his apology was a little hollow, which a lot of times they are.
Yep.
Their apology was good.
NHL issued a statement too. Yeah. And I feel like I will give the NHL props, because I think they have been a little harsher in their words, because unfortunately this isn't the first statement they've had to release in regards to a player doing.
They used the word misogynistic.
I think it was the first time I've ever heard them address that, because I think, and again, this is a topic for another day, but you look at hockey as a whole and there still just aren't that many women. And because it's hard and because I think it's intimidating to go in there as a woman, knowing that these conversations in the locker room banter can be a bit extreme. So I think it was for the NHL to own that maybe this is a problem and maybe we do. And I think they're trying. I mean, I think like any organization, they're always trying. I know, again, they get a bad rap and some of it's warranted, but some of it's not. Like you can only do so. You can't change it all at once. This is decades of
it takes a long time to change this kind of stuff.
So it's like, again, these conversations, as long as we keep them moving forward and as long as we use our voice. And again, I think that's why we decided to move forward in talking about it, because yes, we usually do kind of let the conversation happen around us, but this one just kind of does a little bit more directly impact us as females. And if we can put a little light on it a little bit heavier and help force a change a little bit stronger with this podcast, I think that would be lovely. And I would really appreciate it. So,
and to anyone who felt attacked or hurt by those things that were said, people who weren't even involved in that thing, but people who just looked at that and said, that hurts me a little bit knowing that somebody was talking like that. Please do not let those words by somebody who's insignificant in the situation make you feel bad about who you are or what you look like or anything like that. Because like we said, this is a 1%. It should be a 0%, but thankfully it's not more than a minor percent, because people should not be talking like that. And I hope that people can find it in them to say, that is insignificant. That doesn't apply to me. I don't care what that person said. I am not what they say. I am not like they say. I love the way that I look. I love the way that I act. And I saw a lot of good things on Twitter come out of this. It was very quick. I mean, this all happened in a matter of hours. And by the time that I was going to bed last night, I saw girls in the hockey community posting like, I am beautiful. Here's pictures of myself, of me feeling good about myself. And so if there's anything positive that came out of this, at least that was an immediate positive thing that came out of was women saying, I feel good about myself. And hopefully the long-term positive thing that comes out of this is less and less people act like this. And at some point we're not talking about it at all. That's the ultimate goal. So it's sad that we have to talk about it, but at the same time, I'm glad that Jessi and Fred and myself talked about why we need to talk about this, because I'm happy we did discuss it. And yeah, hopefully we don't have to talk about it these things much more, but it's important when they do come up that we address them.
Right. Nope. You guys are all beautiful. And again, I think our supporters are awesome. You guys have always made us feel very loved and very beautiful and knowledgeable and really great. So we always appreciate that for sure. I mean, it's hard. It's intimidating to put yourselves out there like we do all the time. We've prepared ourselves for that. And here we are. We're still going to keep doing
it. Thick skin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you don't like it, turn us off, I guess. I don't want you to, but go ahead, I guess. So
please don't leave.
And before we get to our break here, I do want to say there is a little bit of positive out of the NHL. The NHL has recently teamed up with a lot of the teams doing their front line is better than the first line, which I love that slogan. Like, that's so cool great, honoring all of the nurses and the doctors and everybody in the medical field that are putting their lives at risk every day with this disease and this pandemic. So see if the NHL does good stuff. Like, they're doing good. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of a nice little, we're going to end it. We'll see. We'll wrap it up happy. A little bow on it at the end of it all, guys. Don't worry. But no, I thought that was really kind of a good initiative. Finally nice to see a little bit of recognition going the right way, but a lot of the players took it really, really seriously. Not to say that they wouldn't, but I can see how it's like, oh, we got to do another thing or we got to do this or that. I think a lot of the players took it very, very seriously. Blake Wheeler, I saw he was awesome. He did his own little video. Matt Dumba did his.
I saw that one yesterday.
Preezy and Alicia gave some money to one of the local hospitals. I mean, everybody across the board. So good on you guys. Good on the NHL. Good on the NHLPA. And
can we this wasn't in the script, and if you guys don't want to talk about this, just cut this out and we'll move on.
She's going rogue.
Can we talk about the Born to Be Wild music video that came out last week? Because I just want to say, I don't think I've laughed and smiled that much in that amount of time in like 2 months. Like, I literally laughed out loud. It was so well put together. And for those of you who haven't seen it, which you should have at this point.
I know at this point, I don't know what you're doing with your time, but
it was on Instagram, Facebook. I think it's originally on YouTube and then it's been shared to all these different spots. But oh my God, it was so funny. It just made me smile because I'm like, this is like, all we've gotten for content lately has been like reruns and like, here's what this person's doing in quarantine. But instead we got like some funny fun quality content. And just some of the guys who they had in there, I'm like, I didn't know they had that side. Like Jared Spurgeon with the wig, who you couldn't have. I was trying to figure out who that was for the entire video. I was like, Jared Spurgeon.
So, and credit to our girl Erin, who was on podcast a couple weeks ago, because that was her team, and quite a few, and Brand McCulley and Dusty and a bunch of other people there that put that together. But I had sent her a note right away after I saw it, because I was like, oh my gosh. And she's like, right? Because like you said, Alexis, you've never seen that side of Spurgeon. I haven't seen that side of any of these guys. And I've been around this team
Eric
for
Stahl,
years
like
now.
his part, I was like, oh my God. The only one that made sense was Al breaking his child slide. I was like, that's on brand.
Or Galchenyuk's cat attacking him. Like, what the hell?
Was so funny.
I think that's it was so great. Like Marcus is always awesome. So that was not surprising that he leads it off, right? I know that's why you liked it. But I think it was so refreshing from this, particularly this Wild team, to let the guys like loosen up and have some fun. Like it seems like every time they try to do this, it just kind of falls a little flat. Like it's never really succeeded. And this time it did. And it was epic. Jewel Erickson Eck.
I made those. When I was at the Wild, that was that is hard to do. Those guys to actually buy into a concept enough,
because they can't all be together to make it. It's got to be clips coming from here.
You have to say, I'm willing to just jump into this bit and actually play around. It is hard to get those guys to actually do that.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that's why I loved it the most, is it didn't seem forced. It seemed like everyone was fully on board, having fun, smiling. Like Jordan Greenway's bit where he's sitting at the table with the sunglasses. I was like, that. Kevin Fiala doing whatever kind of dance he was doing. I was like, I want like one of these a week. Give me a new music video every week, because you could just see their personalities. And I think part of the reason that we don't always see this kind of stuff from the Wild is because the Wild last year, they were the oldest team in the league, and they still are one of the older teams. They're getting a little bit younger, but I think that for teams that have some of the older guys, it's harder to like get them to do those kind of things, because they're just so like straightforward, serious, and you don't always see those parts of them. I mean, you see stuff like this with like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner in Toronto and stuff like that, where it's like they've got younger superstars and guys. So it was really refreshing to see some of those older guys buy into, like Fred said, buy into this bit and be on board with it. And the genuineness that came from it was what made it so funny. It just, I watched it like 3 or 4 times in a row, and Marcus Foligno leading the charge. I was like, that's my man, you go. Like,
and talk about good hockey people. They're good hockey people. Like I've always had a great interaction with, I mean, you know, it was just bravo to the Wild for putting that out. Bravo to the guys for taking part. What's going on with my hair? I apologize, YouTubers. It was really, really well done, and I agree.
Didn't mean to go rogue there. I needed to talk about that because
I was going to put it on. I just haven't.
I
didn't have a chance to add it into the script yet, because I agree. Like I think we've been giving that some love on social. It was solid. So do yourself a favor, go check it out if you haven't already. We're going to take a quick break. Before we do, SodaStick.com, our presenting sponsors. First of all, huge thank you to them for their latest contest giveaway with the cool 2-bit little t-shirt guy, because they got us like 200 plus new followers on Facebook. I don't know what those people were doing before this and why they weren't following us, or not on Facebook, Twitter, excuse me. But so huge shout out to them for that. That was really helpful. Gave us a nice little boost, little confidence boost too. Hopefully we got some new listeners out of it. So for those newbies that are just now checking out Bardown Beauties, hi, thanks for coming. Also socks. Alexis, you said you bought a pair of socks from SodaStick that you're digging.
You guys interrupted my purchase by like joining the Zoom call. I was literally on SodaStick. I'm like, I'm buying these socks, and then it was like the Zoom.
Which ones you get?
I bought the Randy Moss ones.
And yes.
The Paul Bunyan.
Okay.
Yeah, just classic. I love classics. Yeah.
Did you throw down that Bardown Beauties code at checkout?
I will once I can finish purchasing it, once we're done with this podcast. But yes, I will be using that code.
No, they're pretty sweet socks. They've got a whole bunch of good stuff on there, so be sure to go check it out. And again, like I just reminded Alexis, Bardown Beauties at checkout will get you guys some free shipping. Oh, and the Geek Squad.
For YouTube people, I'm wearing the Geek Squad SodaStick shirt with Jordan Greenway, Eric Sinek, and Luke Cunnin for our podcast today.
It's pretty sweet. I should see. I'll wear mine next week then, maybe.
There we go.
Spread the love. Get some love. SodaStick, you the best. We'll be right back with Andrew Brunette. And we're back. Joining us now, Mr. Andrew Brunette. Bruno, how are you doing?
Oh, not too bad, considering the circumstances. Rather be doing just about anything else.
Yeah, no kidding. Are you down in Florida then?
Yeah, I'm in Florida right now. Kind of, obviously the season's been on pause, so we're still waiting to see if we get back going again.
Yeah, no kidding. How are you keeping sane during this time? Florida's a little crazy down there too. It sounds like not sure what to do, what to open, what to not open, that type of stuff, huh?
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's crazy all over. It's crazy times, obviously, in the world right now. But yeah, just trying to stay as sane as possible. The weather's been pretty nice. I've been able to get outside a little bit, and walking and running and biking, and watching Netflix. I think I've almost finished it. But you catch the old baseball and hockey games. It's kind of been fun, but kind of ready for some live sports.
I'm really glad that you didn't lose your Twins allegiance there.
No, I was actually really looking forward to this year. Obviously, some of the moves they made, and grew up a big Blue Jay fan, and them getting Josh Donaldson was pretty excited. So I was kind of looking forward to seeing how they're going to do from afar here, and hopefully catch them sometime this summer.
Well, you mentioned catching some reruns of old sports games, and last week on the podcast we had Richard Park and Wes Walz, and we talked about the famous 2003 run, and both of them had said that until it came on TV just a couple weeks ago, they had not watched the game in full before. Would you say you're the same, or have you watched the game in a rerun form or bits of it, or are you avoiding it? And they both kind of said there was no reason for it. They just hadn't watched it until now.
Yeah, I've never watched it. I knew it was on, obviously down here in Florida, we didn't get it, but I knew up north, Minnesota had it. I had a lot of different texts from a lot of different people saying the game's on, but I have not watched it. Just for the similar reason, not that I didn't want to. I think it'd be a little odd. It just wasn't on, and I've never really gone and looked for it. And I've lived it once, and as of right now, that's enough. It'd be fun to see some of the, some of the things that went on, and to recapture some of those moments of all the different people that, were contributors that you kind of forget, or you forget plays, or you forget little things that, momentum turns that, they were probably huge at the time, but I've kind of forgotten them. I think that'd be kind of interesting and fun to see. But yeah, it's not on my top of my radar right now, but maybe one day.
When people bring that up to you, though, I mean, does it take you back to that moment? I mean, do you still remember a lot of that? You said there are little things, obviously, the sequences maybe that you don't quite remember, but I mean, those goals, you have to remember the elation that you felt, and your teammates all huddled around you, and the way that you guys ignited the state of hockey here. What was that like for you?
Well, that was really special. And I remember most of the goals, if maybe not, well, could possibly remember all of them. But I remember a lot of them. And just the feeling of exactly reigniting the state, of how crazy it was in Minnesota, and the excitement level from wherever you went and whatever you did during that time was pretty special. And that's, probably the time of my life through that stretch of playing the game. I think, I remember, I don't think I've ever heard the X, and I've obviously played in there a long time and coached in there, and was upstairs for a lot of those games, playoff games. And I don't think I've heard it as loud as when Richard Park scored in Game 6. I mean, that was, the whole building felt like it shook there, and it was crazy. And, and the Vancouver home games were pretty special too, when, we were playing them, and I think it was Game 6, or it was crazy in there too. So those are the things I think you kind of just remember. You kind of remember walking around the streets in St. Paul, or even there at the grocery store, and how it captivated the whole state, and that's something obviously treasure very much.
Yeah, and behind the bench during that run, and for a large part of Minnesota Wild history, was head coach Jacques Lemaire. And I think when fans think back to the coaches that the Minnesota Wild have had, head coaches at least, he's definitely one that comes to mind first. What was it like playing for a guy like him, and especially, having this huge run and seeing the smile on his face after some of these games? He wasn't a guy who smiled much. I can only remember a handful of times watching games where he did it. What was it like playing for him and making him proud in those big moments?
Well, I mean, yeah, and just laughing. Yeah, you don't see him smile very often. Maybe a smirk here and there. But no, I mean, playing for him was, you knew when you played for Jacques, you were always the most prepared team. You're never going to get out-coached. So we always felt we had a leg up with him. And, I've been around a lot of, you know, a lot of hockey people over the course of my life, and he's by far, or not by far, but he's the smartest man I've come across in the game of hockey. And for me, it was a huge learning experience. How to, you know, it's helped me become who I've become playing for him, where I've been able to coach at the NHL level, and even in the scouting and part of the management I did. The lessons I've learned from him, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't play for him. There was hard parts with him, absolutely. But, you know, to have him behind, again, when you have him behind the bench, you know, you're leg up on whoever you play.
Did you ever hear that K-Fan bit they have where they have like a fake Jacques Lemaire come in, and the one where he's like, God, I love you, Bruno. I just love you. That's got to be my favorite thing. I think the first time I saw you in the elevator, I was like, that bit comes to mind. I'm like, don't say it. Don't say it. That's weird.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one. But I've heard, you know, it's been a while, but I heard some of the different, I know they had him in, I've heard him before, and he actually does spot on in person.
Yeah, no kidding. You know, you talked a little bit about how he's kind of influenced you in your coaching. What was that transition like from player to coach, and how has that been? And was that something that you always kind of anticipated wanting to do?
You know, it was a little hard, I think, partly because I played with a lot of those guys, and I was just kind of fresh out of the game. And I think that was it's a hard step just to jump in and, you know, kind of be their coach instead of their teammate. Or, you know, a lot of the guys, even, you know, a lot of the Minnesota guys I skated in the summer, you know, Zach and all those guys for years. And then you're behind the bench and coach them. It's a little bit of an adjustment. It's not the easiest thing. You know, I think and we all as players, you know, dislike our coaches at one time or another, and or don't agree with them. So you're kind of always balancing the line of playing, and, you know, them through their eyes as you being a player and then a coach, and you don't want to change who you are. And so it was a great learning experience for me. I think I'm better off for it, but it was tough, you know, with Mikko too, playing on the same line with them, and then you know, having to coach him a little bit. And, so, but again, it made me a better coach, and you know, it helped me grow as a coach. And on that side, as for coaching, I didn't know what I'd like to get. I knew I wanted to stay part of the game, you know, and I've been pretty fortunate to have tried everything. You know, I was, you know, I did some studio analyst stuff, and I did some radio color a little bit with the great Bob Kurtz. We did a Minnesota high school game, which that's one game I don't want to hear again. I'm sure
I don't think I knew about that. What game was it? Do you remember?
I did the 2004 or 5. It was a lockout year state tournament, and I did the final. So it was Holy Angels and Moorhead, and then I did TJ Oshie. They beat maybe Totino Grace maybe in overtime.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I did those 2 games, and those that was a lot of fun. And it capped off the year that I coached Benilde that year too. So I coached with the great Larry Hendrickson. We coached Benilde that year. So it was a really good eye-opening, and it's kind of something I want to do during that lockout year. I didn't play, which was a good decision, just for my body. I was at that stage in my career where, you know, you're in your early 30s, and I still had a lot of desire to play. So it was really good I had a bunch of shoulder surgery. So you know, I wanted to see, you know, playing here and being part of the state of hockey, I wanted to see what the high school level was all about. You know, you know, how special it is, and to go through the sections and then see the state tournament and see all the different games during the year. And coaching was an invaluable experience for me. So to cap it off, I did the the state tournament with Bob Kurtz. But yeah, so I didn't know what I wanted to get into. The avenues were open. I just wanted to get into. I love the game. And, you know, I've been able to wear all kinds of different hats. I did lots of scouting and development, and did some managing, and was part of the whole process. And Chuck was really good to give me freedom to see everything. And, you know, I'm on another coaching, adventure right now, and we'll see, we'll see if this is the path I want. I'm not sure. They're all great, and I'm not sure which one will be the final, but it's fun to dip your toe in everything.
You know, that leads to a great question, how once a player decides to retire, it is so hard to walk away from the game in any respect, right? I mean, could you imagine life kind of without being at the rink and kind of not doing something hockey related at all? Is that so hard to picture?
Yeah, it'd be so hard to picture. You know, I think It's all I've done since I was a kid. So I can't
Yeah.
see it, 5 years old or whenever I started. And even before that, I was probably, um, in the outdoor rinks or driveways and basements and wherever I can find a game, I was willing to play a game. So yeah, I think it'd be really weird. I think there's always, I always want to be a part of it at some level. I know obviously, sometimes you don't have the final say in that, but I'd like to, give something back because the game's given so much to me.
I thought you made an interesting point about how when you jumped on the bench as a coach for the Wild, that there was some challenges as far as becoming a coach for guys you literally played with. Would you say that it's maybe harder to do it that way versus being part of a team that you haven't been a part of before, or guys you haven't played with? Or do you think it's maybe a little bit easier to say, hey, I know these guys, we've been around each other, we've played together for years. Now there's just a bit of a challenge of coaching them now. Or what would you say is the easier option, or is there an easier option?
I mean, that's a great question. I've kind of thought about that this year being, with a new franchise and new players, and it takes a little bit of a, you kind of want to learn about them before you get a feel for them, who they are, and so you want to build a relationship with them and that kind of thing. So was a little bit, that's different too, and there's a little bit of a challenge, for them to get to know me, and obviously the other way around. So yeah, that I don't know which one was harder. The other one, going behind the bench of the Wild, you had relationships with probably 80% of the guys, and either I played with them or, again, like I said, I'd been around them and in the summers and stuff. So it's two different things. It's a good question. I actually thought about that this year, early in the year, that you don't know these players in Florida as well as I did in Minnesota. And again, you're trying to build trust and a relationship, and it takes time. And where Minnesota, I had relationships with a lot of those guys. You still got to build trust as a coach player. Instead of players, I think I trust as players, but a coach player takes a little time to build some trust. So they're both interesting. And right now, I think probably having some background in knowing players is a little bit easier to build that relationship. But, I think probably, maybe a little better coach where you don't know them and you are able to you don't have to be the player, the player relationship's gone. So it's just a coaching relationship. So you don't have to tread that water between changing your whole personality or being different. And, not that you are, but there's obviously a fine line there between a player and a coach in that relationship. So I think it's a little bit easier, but that's a great question. I've thought about that this year. They're both unique positions. There's pros and cons of both, but I think just be able to come in as a coach and instead of as a teammate or a fellow player is probably a little easier to coach.
Right.
That was a long answer.
That makes sense. I mean, that's a lot to think about.
That's kind of what I figured you were going to say. I was just really curious.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned that challenge presented itself with Mikko. I mean, you played with Mikko for so long and then to switch. What's one common misconception? I mean, Mikko gets a lot of flack here sometimes. It's hard to be the captain in the face of this team for as long as he has been. But what's one misconception that you think people and fans should know about Mikko?
Oh boy,
I hear he's kind of funny.
Right? He thinks he's funny. I don't know if he's that funny, but no, he does have a sense of humor, and he likes to laugh and he likes to have fun. And I think, he just doesn't like to show. He doesn't show that side of him outside, or he doesn't want people. He's a private. A lot of the Finns are very private, and he keeps that to himself. But he's got a sense of humor. Again, his jokes aren't as funny as he thinks he is, but he loves to laugh and he likes to have fun. And it's probably the one misconception for sure. And I think, he's been around for so long. I think whenever he does decide to go, and I think, maybe the state of hockey will appreciate him a little bit more after he leaves than during. I know he's had different times where they've kind of been all over him. I don't think he's gotten complete respect that he probably deserves there. They've always wanted more out of him. But just what he brings in, night out, he's kind of, he's the Minnesota Wild. I think, he has a little bit, the way he plays is a little bit of the culture, how the Wild play. Again, I think, you guys will miss him when he's gone, even though, he's taken a lot of flack, like you said, over the years, but, you don't have him. I think you'll realize what he brought.
I know we chatted with him about a week or two ago. They had a media availability, and he said he's been reaching out. Has he reached out to you at all about what to do should the season resume, or kind of, that heavy decision on should he stay or should he retire or should he look elsewhere? What has he reached out at all to you?
Yeah, we've talked quite a bit. And I think right now he's trying to put it all together, and he's probably obviously doesn't have an answer, and nor should he. There still could be some hockey to be played. I think you're still in this season here, even though how bizarre it is right now. It's we're still paused, and there's still some games left to be played, and I'm sure that's what he's looking forward to. And I think after that, he's got time to make his decision, and he can, he's earned the right to do what he feels like he wants to do. And if it's Minnesota, if it's in another team, or it's playing back home, or it's just retiring, I think those are all options for him, and I think he earn the right to make whatever decision he feels like.
Yeah, how hard is this for guys to wrap their head around, for guys like Mikko who are on the tail end of their career, who there's talk that maybe after this year, if the year had gone as it normally did, they would retire. If you were in those guys' shoes, if this was the year that you were going to retire or consider retiring, how does this whole suspension play into your decision? Do you feel like you want a proper end to a season? Do you say, you know what, now this is my sign, it's time to go? How do you, I know it's probably different for each guy, and you got to listen to your body and all of that as well, but how hard does that make that decision when something like this happens?
Yeah, I think it's extremely hard. Because it feels, we've been off for so long, it feels like the season's over in some parts. And, he may have a decision in his mind that, nobody knows. And that would be hard, I think, for a lot of guys. And just even if you had a contract to come back after
right.
being out for 3 months and you don't really know where you're at. So I think it's a really bizarre time. It's hard to really compare it to any other time. Obviously, some of the lockouts that started, I retired during the 13 lockout. So, and I was still in limbo probably till about Christmas. And, you're kind of in and out waiting, and kind of similar to what they're doing now. And I kind of had it in my mind that probably was going to be it at that point. So, but you're always still prepared. Even when the season was, when training camp, that lockout year started again, or they started skating, you're kind of thinking, well, maybe I do want to play, so it's a real tough thing. And retiring in general is the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. It's really hard. And the next 5, 7, 8 years, I've been out of it now for 7, and I guess, and it's still hard. You still miss it. So it's always going to stay with you. It's tough time for professional athletes to walk away from the game.
Do you play in any, do you do any pickups or anything like that? You're on the ice obviously a little bit with the Panthers there, but any other fun pickup games that you get to take part in?
Well, I was lucky in Minnesota. We had a great Tuesday noon skate. So we had a lot of fun. Walzy was on that, and we did Tuesdays and some Thursdays. So that was a lot of fun with a lot of different guys that I played with and known. And but yeah, I do miss that. That's the one thing. That was the one day of the week that you're really looking forward to, Tuesday afternoons, and I miss that a lot. And that was a lot of fun. And you get, Minnesota had hockey everywhere, so I've even done outdoor skates and pond hockeys, and I miss, and being in Florida, we don't get that obviously, but I do miss the games of shinny and and the pond hockeys of weekly or whatever we did. So yeah, that I definitely do miss skating.
So throwing it back again to your playing career for a second, who would you say is the toughest opponent you face? And I'm also curious to say, from a coaching standpoint, who would you say is the toughest opponent you've had to face as well?
Oh boy.
It could be team or player.
Opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah. For different reasons, obviously, probably the toughest opponent. It's a good, yeah. I would say I'll put toughest opponent is probably Chris Pronger.
Okay.
I played against Chris in junior hockey, then through professional hockey, and
he's a tough dude.
yeah, he's a really good hockey player. And then I would say Detroit Red Wings were during that stretch for most of my, at least almost the whole time.
I hated them when I was a kid.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little different than the Red Wings team of today, but yes.
Yeah, totally different. But yeah, they were tough because they were so good, and you just felt you chased the puck the whole game. And Nick Lidstrom was so hard to play against, so smart. and for a different reason than Pronger or Chris. He was just such a smart player that he was hard. Scotty Niedermayer was really tough, just because his skating, and he'd have to go around 5 times if he even got around once. I had to anyways. But those were probably, the guys that I had the most trouble with, and that I figured were the toughest team and players to play against.
And then what about at a coaching level? I'm sure there's different challenges that you face as a coach than as a player when it comes to rivalries and stuff like that. But is there any team, or even like coaches? I know sometimes coaches have beef with each other and you hate playing against a certain coach. Is there anyone that stands out at the coaching level?
Well, I think the coaching levels, or not even the coaching level. No, not at all on that part. But I mean, coaching against different players are for different reasons than when I was playing against them. Obviously, Patrick Kane scares you, when he's gone. Nate McKinnon with his speed. So when you're coaching, you're those guys scare you a little bit more than the physical guys. But Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, obviously, all the best players you guys know are the players that give coaches nightmares too.
Yeah. We talked with Walzy and Park about this a little bit last week, but do you think, the speed of the game has changed so dramatically from when you guys played? I mean, if we were to toss you out on the ice in your prime, do you think there'd be a little bit of a learning curve, or do you think you'd be able to catch up to some of that speed? Or what are your thoughts on how quick the game is moving? Connor McDavid removed because he is a freak.
He doesn't count.
But yeah. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the speed?
Well, I mean, it is a faster game for sure. It's always been a pretty fast game. We just, players have changed. The way the game's played changed a little bit. But yeah, I think generations, if you can play in one generation, you usually find a way to play in another generation. And, I was never the fleetest of foot, to put it kindly. But I feel I could play in the game today. I think if you can think fast, you can play fast, and the game's fast. And, I believed I could think fast. So I think, I definitely could handle the speed. And I think at the end of the day, the puck always has to get to the net, and you always need somebody around the net. So I'd be able to do that too. So yeah, but the game is extremely fast. It's as fast as it's ever been. And again, the way that's been played is really speeds up the game.
Well, and they always say too, like sometimes it's a matter of knowing where the puck's going to go rather than where the puck is to be the best player on the ice. And so sometimes you just got to have the hockey IQ, even if you don't have the speed necessarily to play the game well. But it is interesting how much it's changed. And Parksy and Walzy were kind of giving each other crap about if they could play in today's game or if it would be a little too tough. But it's interesting how much the game changes. And you think back to some of the best players of certain generations, and it's like, how would they fare in today's game? And even like, the enforcer role is kind of going away. So some of those guys that were pretty big in previous times maybe wouldn't be as successful now. So I don't know. It's crazy to talk about players who've been in the league at certain points and now are either in coaching or management or whatever it may be, and just thinking like, could they jump back into the game and be that same player we remember watching? And it's crazy how much a sport can remain the same but still change at the same time.
No, and you had mentioned you'd seen Zach kind of grow up in a sense. You played with him summer league. What player has been really fun for you to see develop and grow and kind of come into his own in the NHL, whether it's Minnesota or elsewhere in general?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, over the years, but if you think of the current Wild team, I mean, obviously Zach has always been a real good player, but to see a Jared Spurgeon, to see a Brent Burns, that was just such a young kid when he played, to watch him grow and become the player and the man he is
the hairy man that he is.
Hairy, exactly. Yeah. Kel Granlund was a fun kid to work with and watch him grow, and Charlie Coyle and all those kids, Nino and Jason Zucker.
So you're talking about all the guys that have left Minnesota now, Bruno, a lot of bad memories.
Yeah. But it's fun, and I still see them now. It's fun to watch them. Even now we had Eric Halla, and it's fun to watch him grow as coming in as a young kid when we drafted him, and see him go through the development camp, and then right to the watch him in college play, and then to the National Hockey League, and then Minnesota, and watch him really boom in Vegas, and made a career for himself. So it's fun to see those guys, and it's fun to see what they've how much they've grown up. It's fun to see Charlie Coyle, and he's a totally different kid than when I saw him when he first come up, and they become men. And so that's the fun part of coaching, is you get to watch these kids develop and turn into, really good hockey players, great hockey players.
Now switching gears a little bit. So we did this with Wes and Richard last week, and we're going to do it to you too. Trivia from 2002, 2003, both of your team. I know we couldn't tell you because you can't be studying for this. This is all off the cuff.
They did pretty good though. I mean, I was actually surprised. They nailed some of the numbers and stuff that I couldn't remember after 17 years for me.
No, definitely. I know. I can't believe it's been 17 years. But we'll start off with maybe we'll start off with you. How many points did you have that season during the regular season?
Ooh. I don't think I had a very good year. I'm going to say 48.
Oh, you were
46.
2 points off.
You needed 2 more assists or another goal and an assist. You would have been there, right?
It's all close.
Yeah. How many penalty minutes do you think you had? Do you think you had less than 20 or more than 20?
I say less than 20.
You have more.
More than you had 30.
Wow.
30.
Wow.
Yeah, you were a bruiser out there.
All right. I don't think Wes and Richard got this one correct. Who led the team in plus minus that year?
Wow.
I think they had plus 17 is what it was.
I'm going to go Philip Kuba.
That's
that was
who they
their
said
guess
too. It's actually Pascal Dupuis.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Yeah. See,
That's funny. They both said Kuba.
They did.
Yeah.
How many points did Gabrick have that year?
Oof. I would say he was probably 60. I'm trying to think, did he play? I'd say he's about 62.
65.
65, another
65.
close.
Okay.
You're in
See,
the
you guys are
wheelhouse
doing so
anyway.
good at this. If someone quizzed me on stuff that happened 17 years ago, I would have no clue.
I didn't even know how old I was. I had to think about it for a while. What was and it's funny because Wes was pretty close and he said that you guys have played this in your locker room at one point in time. I can't remember who played it, but so it's a song that you've heard in your locker room. But it was the top song in 2003. Any ideas?
We play in the locker room.
Not frequently, but he said that one player in particular, and I can't remember who, had played it, and he was like, "What is this song?"
And I gave them this hint, so it's only fair I give it to you too. It's a rap song.
Yes. Yeah. Was it 50 Cent or some of those ones?
Yes. It was that.
I'm pretty sure, wasn't it Cliff Ronning? Is that who he said played it? Cliff Ronning played Into Club. Yeah.
In the club. There you go. Yeah.
All right. Jessi and I won't hold this against you. We want to know how old you think we were in 2003. And we'll give you this hint. Jessi's a little bit older than I am.
Yes.
Okay. So 17, 17. A little bit older. I would say you guys were 13, 12 and 13.
I was 16.
I was 7.
But thank you. Yes.
7.
7.
It's all a little off.
Isn't that crazy?
You were kind of like right in the middle of both of our ages, so you were close.
That's true. Sort of close.
Yeah. And then final trivia question, or it's not even a trivia question, I guess. It's just something that we're curious as to your answer. Who had the biggest superstition on the team?
Oh, Cliff Ronning. Well, you know what? Oh, wait. Well, Walzy was crazy too.
We found out Walzy was a little bit nuts as well. We heard Cliff was number one, but
Cliff was, for sure. Yeah.
They originally, I think, said Manny, and then one of them said Cliff, and then I think Richard Park said that Walls had some crazy superstitions, and so they kind of circled the same names that you did there.
Did you have any? What you had? I mean, I feel like every player has a little something, especially maybe during the playoff run. Did you have anything that kind of sticks out that you had to kind of maintain?
I wore the same suit for the whole playoff, which is kind of gross. I think I dry cleaned it after each round, but so that was probably the superstitions, I think I didn't have it I didn't have enough time to get it back for game 1 against Anaheim. So
that explains it.
That explains everything.
I didn't get it back to game 2, so I started on the wrong foot. So. And I think actually, you know what? I think I didn't get it back. I think I got it back for game 3.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So that blue suit was was probably superstitious. But besides that, no, not really much.
I love it. Well, Bruno, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Love catching up with you. You take care. Hopefully we'll see you around the rink soon.
Enjoy the Florida sun.
Yes, great seeing you, and anytime. Thanks,
yeah.
guys.
Thank you.
Guys. Thank you. Thanks again to Bruno for joining. Gosh, God, I love you, Bruno. I mean, I really do. Have you heard that? Have you guys heard that bit? The Jacques.
I actually haven't.
I will send it.
I don't remember hearing it.
It's so he's right. They nail it on K-Fan. I don't know if it's Corey Cove who does the voice or it's one of the Power Trip guys. But it's just like he comes in and he's like, we got no Brodeen, we got no Brodziacs, we got no Bruno. Bruno, I need you out there. Well, coach, I can't play. Bruno, God, I love you, Bruno. And it's just like this like heartfelt thing. And like I literally remember my first NHL game and he was coaching for the Wild and I'm in the elevator and he's like, hi. And in my head, I'm like, God, I love you, Bruno. And it's just that voice on repeat. And so my husband always said, he's like, next time you see him, you need to say it. And I never did. And I'm so glad I finally got the chance to say it. Like, God, I love you, Bruno. Just because it's so funny. It's super out of context. And I'm glad I never said it to him before this without telling him what it is. But I'll send that link to you. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're here for Dear Diary with Alexis.
Boo! Scared you, didn't I? You were just thinking about how I could possibly be writing in this book and have Wild versus Flames written at the top of the page, right? Well, while everything else that could possibly go wrong is going wrong, the Wild are beating the Flames. It's true, all right? Would I ever lie to you? Don't answer that.
So you like talk to yourself. Like, should we be concerned about this? Should we like?
We should.
Should we like talk to Jim and be like, hey, Jim, I'm concerned.
Listen, I don't know. I don't know if I'm like writing to future me, if I'm writing to like my fans that don't exist that I think are reading this diary. I don't know exactly who I'm addressing when I like refer to you. And
I mean, it's hilarious. Like that's epic. I think I wrote very like third person. I don't know. Like, yeah, you're.
Listen, I don't know what was going on in my brain as a child. It's.
Last question: Where were you writing these? Was it like in bed, like right before you went to sleep and stuff? Where were you writing these?
Okay, so there's two answers to that question. When I was angry, I would literally just write and watch the game at the same time. When I was a kid, my sister and we shared a bedroom, and so the other bedroom in our house we had it as like a playroom. And in that playroom, we had like a little, like, I don't know, like a child's table with like little tiny chairs. And I made that like my Minnesota Wild office. I had like newspaper clippings. I had my notebooks. And I would just go and I would literally, it was like going to work. I would sit there and write for like hours after games. So
are there photos? Are there photos of this office?
Oh, I don't know. Like, I'd have to ask my mom. Why are you
not in this office right now? Frankly.
Does it still exist?
No, my sister is in that bedroom now. We haven't had that as a toy room in years. But yeah, it was literally like my little Minnesota Wild office. I had newspaper clippings, journals, like all of this kind of stuff, and I would just write about stuff. So yeah,
girl, you're an icon. You are an icon.
Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Well, thanks again to everybody. That's a wrap on episode 21. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, let us know. Be sure to subscribe, rate, share. Let's keep this bad boy growing. Thanks again to presenting sponsor Soda Stick. Thank you to Andrew Brunette for joining us and to the Florida Panthers PR for helping us orchestrate that. We appreciate you guys. Fred, thanks for putting all this together. Chop, splice, and doing it all. Alexis, thank you for joining me in giving us women a stand.
Happy to be here.
And talking happy. You know, we have to do all of it. So
we ended on Dear Diary. You guys can't even complain, okay? So
yeah, exactly. No. Join us again next week. Have a good one. Near.